Okay, good afternoon everybody. Hope you all had a nice lunch. So my name is Ruth Kerrigan. I am Director for Research for Integrated Environmental Solutions, and we're the coordinators of the project overall. I need to give some apologies for our project partner Thorsten Reitz from Esri, who was also supposed to be here presenting today, but unfortunately he became ill. So apologies for the change in your agenda, and I'll do my best to present some of his ideas for him. So to give you some background from the software side of view and where we're trying to interact between IES, dynamic simulation modelling, and with city platforms and city tools, I'll just very briefly give you an overview of what our existing software already does. So the IES software for the last 20 years has been used for the design of buildings, and it's a full dynamic simulation modelling software which basically looks at everything to do with the energy design of the building, thermal analysis, daylighting, internal gains, external weather conditions, right across the entire city, or the entire building from first principles. So this is it's a dynamic software and quite a detailed, sophisticated software. And it can be used at any stage of the design. So it can be used at your concept design from the beginning of when you have an idea, an architectural idea on paper, all the way through to the detailed design and the operation of the building. And we are now looking at how we can incorporate this software into the city to allow us to be able to model cities and model multiple buildings and look at different granularities of information that we have at a city level. So just some images of the software, the existing software. So we have some nice visual aspects where we can show 3D images of what the models look like. We can simulate our building and then show, using various legends and colours, the energy analysis from the building, and also look at the external sunlight that might be reflected onto the building, or the internal daylight gains that would be seen also in the building. So it does an awful lot more than this, but I don't want to focus too much today on the actual building software, because we're here today to talk more about what we're developing for Indicate from the city software. So in the last couple of months since we started this project, we've started to look at, first of all, some simple tools and how we can model cities in a simple manner. And the first obvious way of interacting with creation of city tools is to let's look at what existing softwares are out there that particularly urban architects and urban planners or city architects would use. And one of these would be SketchUp. SketchUp is a well-known tool, a lot of architects use it, so this was kind of the first place where we decided to see, can we start to create some city tools. And we've created a very simple software which will be released later on this year, which is looking at creating a city model using the SketchUp plugin. It allows the user to enter energy values related to their buildings. It's manual data entry, so it's whatever information you have, whether it's utility bill information or EPC information or DEC information. You can then look at one building, or you can group a number of buildings together to assess the demand of those buildings. And then you can look at the renewable supply to determine which renewables are suitable to meet that demand for those buildings. And the results are then displayed via a user-friendly dashboard, and there's a number of simple indicators to allow you to compare performance. So the tool in the first instance allows you to link with Google Maps, so we can bring in a map from Google Maps that is already available, or we can link it with OpenStreetMap. Or you could also link it with OS Maps as well. So when I bring in my OpenStreetMap, or if I have a polygon map, which is shown here on the left-hand side of the image, I can then model that in my SketchUp tool. And this is an example of Coventry City, which is partially modelled. And to give you some idea of time frame, 80% of this took less than a day to model. So it's quite a quick and easy tool to use from that perspective. In the 3D image then, each of those polygons gets extruded into the full height building, and then I can select that building and add whatever data I would like to add to it. And then once I have this, we have some simple dashboards which display the results. The top dashboard simply gives us some information about our energy consumption, our building height, our urban form, so a lot of architectural type analysis tools, but also integrating energy. And the bottom dashboard is meant to be more interactive. So the bottom dashboard is now allowing us to assess if I want to match 50% of the demand of my selected buildings, which renewables are going to contribute to reducing my heating, electrical, cooling or hot water demand of those buildings. So the user can interactively play with each of the combination of renewables and understand, what impact they are going to have on their energy supply, on their energy demand. So in similar ways for Indicate, we want to extend this type of interactive platform to not only look at energy, but as some of the things that were mentioned this morning, look at other impacts on the cities that also would have relevance to the urban planners. Just another image. This is where you would actually select your group of buildings, and then these dashboards are actually displayed on top of the model itself. So this is a first very simple example of the types of things we are looking at. Indicate is a 3-year project, and we aim to go far beyond this type of tool. So the next step is that we have created the ability to import this model now into the full IES dynamic simulation software package. And once we do that, now we can do a much further detailed analysis and a much higher level detail of analysis. One of the problems at the moment with this is that it would take a lot of time to simulate that model, because obviously the more detail you have, when you're talking about dynamic simulation, it does take time. So we are moving many of our modules at the moment to be able to run on the cloud. So you can run that module across multiple servers, which then reduces the simulation speed considerably. So one of the questions that was brought up this morning was about data. And this is a very big issue. If we're trying to create models of cities, the model is only as good as the data that we can receive from the city. So there's a number of things that we're currently looking at of how we actually can engage with cities, engage with the users, and understand what data is available and how we can import that data into our model. So the first one is that through another project based in Glasgow, we are developing a very simple mobile tablet application. So this will be run on your mobile phone or on your tablet for both Android, iPhone, BlackBerry and I can't remember the fourth one, but for all platforms anyway. And the idea is we ask the user for very simple information. So we're asking them for their utility bill information, we're asking them for their type of building, their floor area, how is it used, are they there all day, do they go out to work? So you're trying to understand how this building is used from the user perspective. We then have already created a library of simple models. So these are very simple box models that we have created and are based on the cloud. And they work on combinations of answers. So they work on a combination of whether or not I have a particular building type, particular systems installed, and particular behavioural aspects. We then also have a library of retrofit options. And these options are everything that would be suitable for a domestic dwelling, or a commercial dwelling, or an industrial dwelling. And what the app will do then, so the clever bit behind this simple user interface, is that we can now, based on the user information, match the model with that user information and the library of retrofit options, perform a very simple calculation that gives the user back what is the most appropriate retrofit options for their building in their city. And the idea, one of the main ideas behind this, while we're giving back the user some simple information as to how they can retrofit their building, it's more about collecting data from the user in order to be able to understand how the buildings within a city are performing. From a data security point of view, none of that data from an individual building is made available to the public. It's only made available to that user on their website, on their page that they've created via the app. But we have started to look at how we can display that data anonymously on larger scale maps by looking at zoning different areas, so that you can look at, say, a group of buildings together to say this is how this group of buildings is performing, but not necessarily understand how an individual building is performing. So these are areas that we're looking into to make sure that while we want to engage with the citizens in a city and encourage them to give us this information, that they're not going to be afraid or fearful that that information will be made available to their neighbours, for example. So the next step beyond that, so that's very simple information from buildings, is we're looking to create a full-scale city information modelling database. And this city information model database is actually collecting data from multiple sources within the city. So at the moment we're looking at real-time data that may be available. So in IES we've already created the capability to bring BMS data onto a cloud-based system. So we can already take BMS data from a number of different BMS systems and place this on a cloud-based system to be used. We then also have the manual data that you would collect from, example, the app. We can also create full-scale dynamic simulation models of buildings where appropriate, and use this information to estimate where you may not have real information. But then also the cities have lots of other information. So part of the European legislation and directives, every building over 1,000 metres squared must have a declaration of energy certificate, and this is available through the public buildings in the city. There's also energy performance certificate information. There would also be information of floor areas in the cities, or information of building typologies. So the exercise behind this database is to be able to understand what information is available in cities, what information differs between cities, and how we can exploit this information to be able to create a real assessment of how our city is performing. So from the visualization aspect, we're playing with a number of different tools at the moment. So SketchUp, obviously, we've shown you, is one way of how do we actually create these city models and display our data. Another one is WebGL. So this is a very simple image of Glasgow. The OS map there is Glasgow City, and based on top of this is a 3D WebGL map. And this is an example of how we can zone that information in the city to show where the highs and the lows of energy consumption are in the city without showing where the individual building energy use might be. We can also then put on top of that the dashboards which would display the indicators that were talked about this morning. So these dashboards would have different themes based on which indicator set it is, and the user can flip through the dashboards to be able to see if I make a change here or there, how is that going to impact on my overall city. And then it can also be used to compare districts or neighbourhoods or a city to a city. You can also look at it on different scales. So for example, this image here shows you that the colours are related to gas and the heights are related to electricity. So you can see the differences in gas versus electricity on the one map. So these are all very early things that we are kind of starting to look at and starting to see how we can actually display, how we can examine the city from a high level of granularity. So this is looking at the master planning level. As was mentioned this morning, the next steps beyond this now, there's 3 phases to this project, or 3 parts of the software that's going to be developed eventually. The first part is to create a master planning tool which looks at a high level of granularity of detail. So we're not talking about a lot of detail, we're trying to get an overview of how our city is working, we're trying to help city planners understand where the good and bad areas are and where they need to invest their resources. The next step then is being able to drill into a little bit more of an area and integrate that with either systems that have already been identified for the city councils and help them understand which is the best renewables to apply, which is the best buildings they need to reduce demand in, and where to focus their efforts. And the last stage then, once they've done that, is allowing them to optimise that at a building to building level. So looking at maybe 10, 20 buildings in one small group and being able to optimise that. So the idea behind the software that we're developing is that it has different levels that we can allow the cities and the users to examine. These are visuals that are very simple. We have Esri, who are one of the partners on the project, and they're the owners of City Engine, which is a much more powerful visualization tool. And the idea is, through this 3-year project, that the tools that we developed will be integrated with the City Engine platform to give a very realistic view of how your city landscape is changing based on the potential results that you can apply to the building. So I've got a very short video here that I'll just play for you now, which gives a little bit more information on the City Engine tool. And and then I'll just say a few comments on it afterwards.
As the city engine transforms your 2D GIS data into smart 3D city models. And with the city engine web viewer, you even can share them with the public or decision makers. This means city engine scenes can be published directly in the web and ArcGIS online. The web viewer comes with exciting new features such as the swipe tool. With this, you can easily compare before and after scenarios. For example, by using the swipe tool, everybody can immediately understand the impact of a new planned urban development.
One of the things that makes City Engine so powerful is that City Engine is about huge 3D city models. Imagine to model a city like Philadelphia with several 100,000 housing units. So we make sure that with our technology you can produce your city in a fast and cost-effective way.
City Engine is fully integrated with ArcGIS. From start to finish, transforming your 2D GIS data into a smart 3D city model takes only 5 steps. Benefit today and create your smart 3D city model in less time and share it through the City Engine web sim viewer on ArcGIS Online. You can download a free 30-day trial at israel.com/cityengine.
Okay, so I'll just briefly pull out 3 things from that video. The first one is the interaction with ArcGIS. So most cities nowadays have a GIS platform where they create their data and have their data stored, and 40% of those actually use ArcGIS. So the first part of this project will be examining ArcGIS platform to be able to see how we can link that data that's already available with visualization tools and also with the simulation tools. The next part then is that we want to be able to use the simulation software where we're determining what the energy impacts are on the city with respect to the changes that you make, and actually then display this. So you saw the little slider that pulls across and pulls back. So the idea behind that is that you'll be able to understand how changes to an existing building or say integration of renewables such as PVs or maybe green roofs or green corridors, how that would actually visually look in the city before it's implemented. And this could help with, for example, one of the problems that Genoa is having at the moment with respect to trying to show the residents how the area will look and give a bit of reassurance that this won't be as bad as people think it's going to be. And the last part then is the indicators. So on top of this then will be how do we actually use those indicators to be able to understand what the impacts are on the overall urban environment. So if I make changes from an energy perspective to my buildings or to my electricity grid or to my networks, how is that going to impact my other systems in the city, such as my transport routes, my water network, my waste network, and the overall urban environment, which is probably the biggest challenge of the project, which Tom and his team are taking care of. I don't have to do it. So I think that's everything from me. So I'll hand over to John now to give his presentation, and then please feel free to ask as many questions as you want afterwards.